Last but not least, we have the cherry on the ice cream sundae that has been the spotlight stage. So thank you for being with us. I think this actually might be our best attendance, so there you go. It's an indication of their popularity. This is the SD-WAN panel, for those who weren't sure. We have two excellent panelists, Chris with Intel and Tom Komuro-san with NTT Communications. We're doing something a little bit different this time, which is both of them actually have prepared materials that they want to show. So what I want to do is maybe just start with introductions. I know, Chris, you're in a new role, so it'd be good to learn about that. And then maybe we can get into the material that you've prepared. So with that, Tom, can you tell us a little about yourself?
Myself? Hi, hello, working? My name is Tom Komuro, working for NTT Communications. I'm doing business development and startup relationship. And I followed up the SD-WAN industry a couple years before. And I did a chairman Intel SD-WAN session in Intel of Tokyo last June.
Can I add a very basic question just for context for the audience? There's various companies within the NTT family.
Okay.
What is communications focused on?
Okay, so the NTT Communications focus on the cloud and the network, especially we want to sell the data centers as well. And our company is a leading company about software-defined network, and we contribute on Open Network Summit. And when AT&T announced a concept a couple years before about the SDN, at the time NTT Communications already deployed SDN and disclosed how to deploy the software-defined network and how to manage a software-defined network.
Thank you. And Chris, thanks for being here. And you're in a new role, it sounds like.
Yeah, my name is...
We met in a past life, so...
That's right. My name is Chris Cavagioli, and as John was saying, I have a new role at Intel. I moved recently from the client side, building Atom-based phones and tablet SoCs, over to the network side, doing things like mobile edge compute, distributed cloud computing, and SD-WAN. So it's interesting right now because I can see kind of the whole end-to-end of the use cases that we're trying to develop.
And then can you tell us a little bit about the group within Intel that you're with? I know data center group doesn't get quite as exposed as some of the other business units, so it'd be good to learn about that a little bit.
Yeah.
And by the way, is NTT Communications your data center customer, or?
Yeah. So.
Good question.
So. Yeah, so Intel has multiple business units, and the data center is maybe the one not as publicly visible because it's the data center and the networking are typically behind the scenes, but it's a very rapidly growing group, and it's a very exciting place to be right now because as the mobile and device hockey stick is slowing down, and there's kind of an anticipation for 5G going on right now. Meanwhile, and when that's happening on the device side, the network side, companies are scrambling to transform the networks to software-defined networks and the network function virtualization and such in order to be able to support faster deployment of services, enable things like around 5G and network slicing and such. So what's happening is as the devices and modems are being built, the roads are already being paved in the network side, and that doesn't have to wait for 5G, that can start today. And a lot of companies are doing that. We're also seeing a lot of new entrants in the market, for example in SD-WAN, where there are a lot of startups that are coming up with products that are very compelling, and it's disrupting the industry a bit. It's an exciting time to be. And the interest for Intel, of course, is that we're interested in selling our chips, and as people are moving from dedicated network processors to general purpose Xeon-based compute farms, you can do all the networking within general purpose hardware, and you can reconfigure it very quickly for service agility. So that's a very exciting area for us.
And by the way, by rapidly growing, I mean this is like a $20 billion business within Intel, or somewhere thereabouts, projected to get to 30, I think was what the public guidance was. So really a growth engine inside Intel. So, Tom, when we talked, it sounded like you're in the process of evaluating a potential vendor for SD-WAN. So maybe we can hear about that.
Right, and I'm working, my engineering team, we're working with some US-based vendor like VeloCloud and Biptela, Nuage, and Cisco I1, and Silverpeak. But the pure SD-WAN vendor is the VeloCloud and the Biptela. But because the reason why we evaluate each vendors, so they have a different, strongest point is different for each vendor. Some vendor strong for the security, some vendor strong for the performance, and some vendor strong for the collaboration with existing SDN network. So the carrier and the service provider need to evaluate each vendor's solution, and each ISP have to have a responsibility to sell the SD-WAN solution to enterprise customers, depend on the customer's requirement.
This might be a good time to pop his slides up. He's got a little landscape diagram which gives a little context. Oh, that's Intel. The other one. These are good, but the other ones. One down. Yep, NTT Com. There you go. Yes. All right. And you had a landscape diagram in here that might help.
Next page.
Yeah. There we go.
Right. So there is, this is just a landscape, and there is many software-defined company around here. But in the middle, and there is SD-WAN areas. So left of the SD-WAN, there is a pure SD-WAN vendor, and there is a Biptela, VeloCloud, and Versa, and Glue. So they have a very strong point for each. And the middle of the SD-WAN area, so this is a vendor to support and adjust after VeloCloud and Biptela create the SD-WAN market. But Cisco and the Silverpeak also has a strong point who has a solution to collaborate with existing network. Because if customers already installed Cisco's appliance in the network, they can communicate SD-WAN's appliance with IPsec. So enterprise doesn't need to throw away every appliance. So this is the thing. So
the appeal, yeah. So tell us a little bit about the ONUG. You have Open Networking User Group. Can you give a little context on that for folks here?
I'm sorry, so I don't have a responsibility about that kind of areas. Yeah.
You had some material on that earlier, but okay, we'll pass on that. So, but your hypothesis going into this is you were saying there's customer demand for this.
Right.
So are you here to plan to be a managed service provider, or what will be your customer?
So my customers ask me to sell the SD-WAN because some customers need some performance, or some customer concern about the security, especially the Asian Pacific. Broadband is so weak, and some vendor can distribute a solution to bundle the multi-internet, and the performance is better than the single internet.
It's very convenient that your customers are asking for this.
Right.
So, okay, very good. And so on the demand, or I guess what I'd call the demand side, because you're the buyer, but reseller, we have NTT Communications.
Right. So we are planning to distribute a SD-WAN solution as a platform services. But as you know, our company is telco, and someone says that telco is very slow and dinosaur. And I tried to sell the SD-WAN solution with a US-based startup company. And we educate a sales guy, and we educate an engineer guy with some startup, US-based startup company.
That's great. So,
yeah, which is actually also, I think one of the benefits of SD-WAN is because you can deploy so quickly, and you can modify your network configuration very quickly.
Right.
Essentially, you can undinosaur the telcos, and it allows the telco to provide very flexible services very quickly. So it's in your
Yeah, you're right. So the SD-WAN is a very good solution to launch a new branch, but they need enterprise and service provider need knowledge to make a configuration to implement an SD-WAN appliance. Through our evaluation, it's very hard to learn about SD-WAN configuration.
Actually, Chris, I think this is a good segue to Chris's material also. So let's pop that up. Because Chris, you had some material. What I interpreted to me is sort of a multi-office.
Yeah. So the first slide right here, you can build it out. Yeah. So this is what I said earlier, that what we see a transformation from yesterday to tomorrow, where the networks are going from purpose-built networks to software-defined, flexible networks. And this is really impacting a lot of the business, and this is where a lot of the IA hardware is deploying out to the market, which is a very interesting thing for us. The second slide is kind of a definition slide. I think there's I don't know if there's a background. Can you click it one more time? Oh yeah, okay. So I've noticed as I talk to people about SD-WAN, not everybody really knows exactly what SD-WAN is, and that it may be confused with software-defined network, or SDN. So what a SD-WAN is a way, it uses SDN principles, but it's specifically done to create a logical connection between the headquarters and the various branch offices. And it allows people to set up that link and to configure that link even without having a lot of IT expertise. So it's very easy to learn how to use, and it's much lower cost than the traditional mechanisms. And it can take advantage of various different channels. You can use MPLS as well as Ethernet and whatever channels, and it can do load balancing, and it can do a lot of other ways of ensuring that connection to your branch offices is not as brittle as it could be if you had only dedicated lines. So the advantages are around the lower cost, what we call the zero-touch provisioning. It's safer. There's also less risk that if something goes wrong, it doesn't bring the whole network down. It might just impact a certain subsegment. And also things like WAN optimization that were done separately now can just be a function within the SD-WAN itself. So it can subsume some of the other functions that you had to install separately before. And we see that this is interesting both for enterprises that are designing their own WANs. It's also very interesting for telcos like NTT, where they can offer services based on that network to people that don't want to deal with the network themselves. They just want to have somebody else do it for them. And it's interesting because the classic bigger providers like Juniper and these guys are providing these services, but also a lot of smaller new companies like VeloCloud, who's over here in a demo, and the CloudGenix and the other companies you mentioned are entering in this market.
So, and Chris, you're more, I think the term on the last panel was ingredient brand. So who are your channels for this market? Are you enabling telcos? Are you enabling enterprises? Who sits between you and the end customer?
So we supplied the OEMs that build the equipment. So that would be like the VeloClouds and the Junipers and stuff. So we would supply to them, and then they would supply to the telcos or the enterprises. But we help to evangelize this technology in order to help speed up the transition of, maybe dedicated silicon to the IA-based software-defined networking.
And does this play into your data center business as well, or is this generally meant to be sort of hosted kind of either at a third-party telco or on the client side? Where does this reside for an appliance?
Typically, and you can see the game changer part in the bottom, is that the real game changer is if you can put SD-WAN and also do the virtual CPE, and it can be co-located, it can be in the same device, that really, each one scratches each other's back, and it really creates this spiral of performance and
Yeah, you are right. So some vendors already developed a software version CPE.
Very good. And then, so we've heard about virtualizing CP. What CPE in particular are your customers looking to virtualize?
Currently, our customers need some variety of the physical appliance right now. But I guess some customers ask me to support an LTE-based appliance because on a convenience store and the ATM, and they doesn't need an expensive MPLS. And currently, the LTE is a robust network for them. And the important thing that there is zero-touch provisioning. I think that is a Japanese special trend, but NTT and the other carrier provide internet using a PPPoE. So if customers use a PPPoE, there is no zero-touch provisioning. So we need a one-touch provisioning. Yeah.
So you vetted a bunch of potential suppliers or partners. It sounds like you're fairly along with one of them. What's the sort of a next step as far as getting the market? But also, are there things you're looking for that folks here should know about?
I think the next step on NTT Communications, how to make a decision and about the SD-WAN business. So because our enterprise customers asked me to propose the SD-WAN, but that is a system integration business. But NTT Communications would like to do the platform business. But we didn't make a decision.
Yeah, I think one of the good things about SD-WAN too is that, especially if you're relying on your WAN for your daily business, you don't want to be able to, you don't want to have to rip and replace your equipment. So SD-WAN allows you to add to the network with the lights still turned on, and you can create the SD-WAN with the legacy equipment in place, and it can just augment your network, and over time you can remove the legacy equipment if you need to.
Very good. So we're on about 3 minutes, so I want to make sure we get any questions that there might be. I see one right up front. Sir.
First, I'd like to make a comment. Maybe the panelists can respond. I do have a short question for Intel. The comment is, it's my observation that every network provider has their own unique, effectively proprietary version of SD-WAN. They make a spec. It's then given to their suppliers. The suppliers build it, works great, but it won't work on any other network. Having said that, my question for Intel is there any special hardware that Intel is now or in the future putting on their high-performance processors to accommodate SD-WAN functionality?
So I think to the first question, it's true that there is no standard for SD-WAN. I mean, the different vendors will have their focus areas that some will focus a little bit more on security, some will focus a bit more on some other elements. The good news is that SD-WAN is very easy and low cost to install, and it allows you to do service chaining and stuff like that. Now, if you try to mix vendors, it gets a bit more complicated because you have to understand if those vendors are compatible with each other or if or not. So this is an area that is evolving. There is no standardization happening right now across the board on that area, but it does allow the enterprises and telcos to experiment or to test different configurations.
And as Intel, I assume you're fairly agnostic, or want to be agnostic, so to speak.
Yeah, so, and we like to keep it that way so that you can use general purpose processors, and that kind of goes to your second question. You know, as you know, in the press, we've acquired companies like Altera to try to accelerate certain things with FPGA. You know, that may show up at some point in that space, but the real crux of the matter is to try to keep things general purpose and software programmable. So yes, we will have hardware acceleration for certain things, but generally we try to keep things general purpose.
Very good question. So, Rakesh, I love it. A question for every panel.
Thank you. There's a lot of solutions out there between headquarters and branch offices of companies, and I think you talked a little bit about the MPLS kinds of solutions. Now, those are been sort of stodgy and old-fashioned and sort of expensive. There's a new wave of opportunities in that area having to do with using internet links and basically intelligently figuring out which of those links can deliver that kind of performance but at very, very low cost. Can you comment a little bit about those kinds of SD-WAN solutions that you're seeing in the marketplace and which ones might be more promising and from where?
Very nice question. Yeah, that is the point NTT Communications is struggling right now. So as you know, Verizon already announced the SD-WAN solution, and they shifting to selling the network to managing the network. And they decided to provide an SD-WAN solution and get revenue from the managing services. But in NTT Communications, unfortunately, we didn't make a decision right now. And as you know, MPLS is very expensive. Customer already realized, and the customer like to shift from the expensive line to the cheapest or reasonable lines. So I believe MPLS are good services, but I have to think about how to combine the existing expensive network and reasonable network.
And I think that's one of the good things about SD-WAN is it allows you to take advantage of the different circuits that you have. So if you have the MPLS already there, you can still use it, but you have alternatives. And if one goes down, the other one still exists, so it provides more redundancy.
We're into overtime, but I see the mic is in the hands of a dangerous man. All right, let's.
Thank you for the compliment. Rick Pearson, Fat Pipe Networks. From a carrier perspective, are you looking at SD-WAN as an ability to offer a new type of service level agreement? You can offer a service level agreement on your pipe, but you can't see inside of the enterprise's WAN. With the right SD-WAN partnership, you can start offering a service level agreement at the app level. Have you thought about that? And if not, our table's right over there.
Okay. All right. Okay. Talk to you later.
We'll come visit.
Nicely played. All right. So we're the last thing standing between you and lunch. So with that, I'd love to thank our panelists for being here. Thank you for hanging out all morning.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.